The Bleach 1000-Year Blood War Core 2 finale has just dropped, with episode 25 titled The Master and episode 26 titled Black. Episode 25 rearranged several scenes from the manga with multiple anime exclusive scenes which build upon the 5 chapters worth of manga material that are adapted into the episode. The sequence of events are massively changed around in comparison to the manga, and it's like a totally different version of the 1000-Year Blood War arc. You're honestly going to be so surprised by some of these changes. Episode 25 has several new fight scenes involving Hashward and Uryu as they battle the Zero Division, along with Ichibei, Yhwach, and even Mairi getting new lines of dialogue, with the episode then concluding with a post-credit scene which features Shunsui and Ukitake. The final episode of Core 2 also dropped this week, as episode 26 titled Black adapts material from chapters 607 to the halfway mark of chapter 609, as it adapts roughly 2.5 chapters worth of manga material with loads of anime exclusive scenes, including a new fight sequence between Senjumaru, who single-handedly takes on the Shoot Starfall. Now, episode 26 has been a little controversial with some of the last-minute alterations that have been made to it, which had resulted in the original title for this episode A being changed to Black. Because of this, it led to us receiving a 4-minute Shinigami Zukan segment after the outro song. Now, this is similar to the comedic post-credit scenes from the 2004 Bleach anime. This segment featured several comedic moments that were not adapted into previous episodes, as they have been shoehorned into the end of this episode. There is an insane amount of things to cover in this video, so rest assured I'm going to be covering every cut, change and addition that has been made, and as always I'm going to refrain from talking about any scenes that are one-to-one adapted from the manga, as I'm solely going to be focusing on what has been cut, changed and added to the anime. So without further delay, here is my manga versus anime comparison for episode 25 and 26 of Bleach's 1000-Year Blood War arc anime. Episode 25 begins by adapting material from chapter 606, where we see Yoriichi's younger brother rushing to find her, as we cut to Urahara with 6 pages worth of material being adapted from chapter 606. Now this involves the Vizards arriving and Hiyori scolding Urahara until Yushiro arrives and is introduced to us, and the scene ends with Hiyori stating that she has always hated how Urahara justifies his actions by stating that they are for the sake of the Seirete, as we then cut to the intro song. Following the opening song, the rearrangement of manga material continues as we pick up from where we had left off at the end of last week's episode, with the last 2 pages of chapter 604 being adapted. This is where Ichibei warns Yhwach not to say his name so casually, unless he wants to lose his voice by having his throat crushed. The intense music playing here really gives off such a cinematic feel as we begin the finale of Core 2 in proper style. It is all just so hype-inducing and I really enjoyed it. We then cut to an anime exclusive scene which you can expect a lot of from now on, since the anime has diverged from the manga slightly, with Yhwach having already confronted Ichibei while the Zero Division members are left behind to confront Uryu and Hashwald. Within the manga version events, Yhwach had only gone on to confront Ichibei after the Shoot Starfall were revived and following Nimaya's defeat. Now the anime shows us Nimaya pointing his Zanpakuto towards Hashwald and Uryu, and in an all new line of dialogue he states that it is terrible for their king to have ran away, so he'll just have to settle for killing his successor, as he asks them who is Yhwach's heir. Immediately following Nimaya's new dialogue, we cut to page 6 of chapter 605, with the first 5 pages of the chapter being saved for the post-credit scene of episode 25, but I'll talk more about that a bit later on. The remaining material of chapter 605, featuring the early portions of Ichibei vs Yhwach, are faithfully adapted into the anime with little to no changes. I really love the animation when Ichibei draws his seal behind him as their battle begins. I think that the anime really improved upon the manga content here as the epic showdown commences. After Yhwach summons Sankt Bogen and returns from being slapped hundreds of miles away, we end content from chapter 605, and we continue with material from the first 3 pages of chapter 606, where Ichibei states that he is left with no choice but to kill him, as they both draw their weapons and charge towards each other. We then return to anime original content, which features several new lines of dialogue accompanying never before seen fights involving the Zero Division versus Hashward and Uryu, with Nimaya stating that it doesn't make any difference who goes first, as Hashward draws his sword, stating that they were fortunate that they didn't have to fight against His Majesty. He then uses his Shrift ability to balance to bestow an equivalent amount of misfortune upon the Zero Division, which results in Kiryo's Cage of Life crumbling away. This is confirmed with Kiryo rushing up to the top of her cage as she states that she doesn't know what kind of power he has just used, but her cage isn't going to be so easily destroyed. She then infuses her reishi into several small pieces of a tree, which enlarge and reconnect the broken cage back together again. Following this, Cringy appears and summons his White Bone Hell Spring Water, which he fires at Hashward and Uryu as it envelops them. We then see Senjumaru as Uryu appears in front of her after having used Haren Hyaku to evade Cringy's attack. So the stage appears to be set for the all-new fight sequences as Uryu confronts Senjumaru while Hashward battles Cringy. Senjumaru and Uryu begin clashing in a really impressive anime-only fight sequence as they taunt each other while she uses her golden arms to attack him with needles. Now the anime has another amazing addition here as Uryu evades her attacks by reinforcing his hands with Blut Veen. Meanwhile, Cringy activates his Zanbakudo Kinpika's Shikai as it begins to blindingly glow, and this was shown to us in chapter 588 originally, when in the manga version of events, Cringy had used his powers against Yhwach. But instead, his abilities are shown here in this anime exclusive fight scene where he fights with Hashward as we begin to see the two of them clash. Now while Kiryo is overseeing the Cage of Life, Nimaya is confronted by Askin, who is revealed to have survived, and this is very similar to the manga as we get content adapted from the end of chapter 601 to 602. Now I was worried that this content would be completely cut from the anime, but thankfully they have chopped and changed things around and managed to squeeze it in with some reworked new scenes which honestly flow together seamlessly in my opinion. So the material from the last 2 pages of chapter 601 is faithfully adapted into the anime as we begin Askin's counterattack against Nimaya. Now this moment does occur immediately after Nimaya takes out Askin in the manga. The anime reworks this later on into the story because of all of the changes and additions that have been made. Now there is a very notable change that has been made with the first page of chapter 602 where we learn about the definition of a lethal dose not being adapted into the anime. Now this manga page explains that a lethal dose is a fatal amount of a given substance that is consumed by an organism, as we are given examples of the fatal doses in milligrams of caffeine, nicotine and wolfsbane per kilogram of body weight, since a lethal dose is relative to the size of the organism. Instead of this exposition dump, the anime just has Askin explain that a shrift is the letter D, the death dealing, as he explains that he can accurately calculate the lethal dose of any substance and he can adjust it at his will. So after Nimaya collapses to the ground, we cut back to anime original content with Uryu versus Senjumaru. Now this new scene reveals several new abilities for Senjumaru. The most notable is when she uses a defensive umbrella to defend against Uryu's Rain of Light attack. We then cut to Cringy's anime only battle against Hashward as he manages to throw away Hashward's sacrifice shield, which allows him to absorb misfortune. Now they both then clash as Cringy is able to deliver a critical blow that seemingly kills Hashward. This was an unbelievable addition that has been made to the anime, and I cannot believe that Cringy was responsible for killing Yhwach's right hand man. These changes are really giving the Zero Division the respect that they deserve, and thankfully this frees up Cringy so that he can now assist Nimaya, which lines up perfectly with the rearranged manga content from chapter 602. So following Cringy's battle, the remainder of chapter 602 is faithfully adapted into the anime, and despite the rearranged material, Cringy manages to pull through with the assist, as Nimaya ultimately defeats Askin. But now, because the manga and the anime have diverged slightly, the end of chapter 602 isn't adapted. This is because it features Nimaya challenging Yhwach, who is still inside the Cage of Life within the manga, so this scene ends up being cut from the anime. We then transition to the finale of the anime exclusive fight between Uryu versus Senjumaru as balls of reishi appear to be spinning on top of an umbrella. Now the reishi breaks up into smaller pieces as it expands out into threads that chase after Uryu like homing missiles. They appear to be moving far too fast for him to evade as he is struck by several of them. He then ends up being defeated by Senjumaru, and this is a massive departure from the manga where Senjumaru and Cringy really felt like they had lackluster roles within the story, and the anime has honestly given them a lot of respect by showcasing them defeating Hashward and Uryu here. Additionally, Nimaya single-handedly defeating the Shoot Starful was pretty much unchanged from the manga, and these new additions just help to give each of the Zero Division members more importance, and hopefully it's enough to satisfy fan expectations. So Kiryo appears at the end of the anime only scene stating that the Zero Division have wrapped up their fights and now it's up to Ichibei to finish off Yhwach. We then cut to material from the middle of chapter 606 as Ichibei and Yhwach clash, with Yhwach commenting on how Ichibei's face appears to be more disturbing after he had declared to kill him. The rest of chapter 606 is faithfully adapted into the episode until the point where Ichibei slaps Yhwach away and asks him how it feels to be smashed into pieces with only half of his power by the leader of the Shinigami who he loathes so much. Now the last two panels of the chapter where Yhwach responds to his question are not adapted as we cut to the mid-card of the episode. Now the second half of the episode begins by adapting material from chapter 603 which wasn't adapted earlier as we see Giselle drinking her blood from zombified Bambietta. About 6.5 pages are adapted into the anime as the anime cuts about 4 pages of material involving Robert, who appears and points his gun at Lil Toto as he then appears to panic about Yhwach having abandoned them. Now instead of these scenes involving Robert, we get an all new anime exclusive Ashvalin scene that occurs in a totally different order to the manga, as it happens during the early portion of his battle with Ichibei as opposed to the manga where he had casted Ashvalin while he was still inside Kiryo's cage of life. The anime original scene begins with Ichibei reflecting on their meeting from 1000 years ago, which was revealed at the start of episode 24. He tells Yhwach that 1000 years appears to have been too short of a time for him to reflect on his mistakes, as he states that he will now have eternity to reflect on his actions. As he prepares to attack him, Yhwach casts Ashvalin. He chants several lines as the light of his consecration rains down over the Serete, enveloping several Soldat as well as the surviving Sternritter, as they offer up their power in order to revive the Schutzstaffel as well as Hashwad and Uryu, who were defeated in the anime exclusive scenes. The new Ashvalin scene reveals new footage of several Shinigami as well as Quincy reacting to the light. Now Mayuri also gets new lines of dialogue here where he wonders if the light is absorbing Reishi, as he quickly corrects himself by explaining that it is power that is being absorbed from the souls of the Quincy. We also see an anime exclusive shot of Meninas carrying an injured Candice as the two of them are also hit by the light of Ashvalin. Now the scale of the consecration is truly depicted to us as we see multiple Soldat are sacrificed, as Lil Toto questions just what on earth are they to Yhwach. The manga context mixed together with the new anime scenes really sells the impact of Yhwach's actions and how the Sternritter have been effectively betrayed by their leader, who has just used them to progress to the next stage of his plan. This new Ashvalin footage is shown alongside manga content from the end of chapter 603 and the start of chapter 604, where Lil Toto and Bazby resolve that they are not going to die here. A page from chapter 604 is not adapted into the anime as it showcases Byakuya reacting to the light, where we see him wondering what the light is that is shooting out from the Serete. Instead, we are shown Shunsui telling Okikiba and Nanao that it isn't the Serete that's in danger, it's the royal palace, as he then asks them if it's okay for him to leave his post. It seems like he has another urgent matter to attend to. With Hashwad, Uryu and the Schutzstaffel revived, we get to see the distinctive shape and style of the wings of each of the Schutzstaffel members. Ichibei goes on to state in an anime original line of dialogue that it is disgusting that Yhwach has resorted to taking the power of his comrades, as Yhwach responds with a line from the end of chapter 603 as he explains that his underlings help one another as comrades, as he tells the Schutzstaffel to come back to life and to move forward. We then cut to material from the middle of chapter 604 with Nimaya asking what is going on. Now in the manga, Nimaya had been attacked by Lil Barrow immediately after he was revived, but in the anime he appears to be unharmed. Hashwad then begins to explain Ashvalin to him, stating that it is one of His Majesty's powers, as he exclaims that the scales have now been tipped as he tells the Zero Division to prepare themselves. Now this is where the episode ends as we cut to the title card The Master as the ending song begins to play. Now make sure that you stick around until after the outro because we do have a post-credit scene for episode 25. The post-credit scene adapts manga content that wasn't adapted earlier into the episode as we continue the trend of chopping and changing around material, as the first 4 pages of chapter 605 are adapted here. The post-credit scene faithfully adapts Shunsui's brief meeting with Ukitake, who reveals to him that the Kamikake ritual has been completed successfully, and it has been done in anticipation of the enemy reaching the royal palace, as Shunsui proceeds to reveal that he is headed off to the Central 46 to deal with another pressing matter, as we then end the second to last episode of Core 2 on a very suspenseful cliffhanger. Now thankfully we don't have to wait an entire week to find out what happens next, as episode 26 was released alongside episode 25, which means that we are only halfway through with the content for this week's manga vs anime comparison video. Next up we have the final episode of Core 2 titled Black, so let's continue by discussing how the anime staff handled adapting one of the most highly anticipated fights of Bleach's final arc, as we dive into the remainder of Ichibe's intense battle against Yhwach. Episode 26 begins with an anime original sequence which continues from the end of episode 25 as Yhwach tells the Shoot Starfall that it is time for them to show him their wings. The revival of the fallen Quincy is felt by Ichigo and company as we get visuals of Uryu, Hashward and the 4 Shoot Starfall members revived with their glowing wings. Yuha tells Ichibe that everything in this world exists for him to take, including the Soul King. This of course is reworked and rearranged dialogue from the start of chapter 607, with a notable addition to the anime being a line of dialogue where Yhwach mentions that even the Soul King is his to take. After he stops the downpour of Reishi from the Ashwaulan, he orders the Shoot Starfall to launch their counterattack, as we cut to the title card of the episode Black, which is then followed by the opening song. After the intro, we begin by backtracking slightly and adapting material that wasn't included in episode 25, as content from chapter 604 is adapted, where Nimaya is immediately shot by Lil following his revival. The content from chapter 604 is reworked into the anime, and it fits very seamlessly with all of the changes and additions that have been made. The manga content where Lil explains how the X-axis works, as well as Kurinji and Kiryu attempting to block his attack, are also included from chapter 604. After Nimaya is shot through the chest, we begin an anime exclusive scene where Kurinji uses Kinpika's bright light to distract Lil, while Senjumaru picks up Nimaya and heals him with an all-new technique. So she fills his wounds with what appears to be wool as she stitches him back together using her golden arm extensions. This completely restores Nimaya. This is a massive departure from the manga, because after Nimaya is shot by Lil in chapter 604, we don't really ever see him again, because this was the attack that ended up defeating him. This is then followed by anime exclusive dialogue from Gerard, who comments on Nimaya being healed, as we then see the Zero Division who are ready to fight back, as each of them have new lines of dialogue here, like Kurinji telling the Quincy not to underestimate Squad Zero, as he explains that they are stronger than all of the Gotei 13 combined. Kiryu then creates several branches which transform the landscape surrounding the combatants, as they are engulfed into a ball made up of oversized branches. Now this has been done in order to set the stage for several anime exclusive battles that further expand upon the Zero Division's role in the story, as Senjumaru battles Gerard, Kiryu battles Pernida, Kurinji battles Askin, and lastly Nimaya vs Lil is expanded in the anime. Honestly, I really loved these new fight sequences. They were brief and did enough to show how the Zero Division had the upper hand on each of the revived Shoot Starfall members, which was a welcomed change from the manga, because originally in the manga, after they were revived, the Zero Division was assumed to have been defeated, with them getting pretty much off-screened as the attention then turns back to Yhwach vs Ichibe instead. Now these several different anime exclusive fight sequences here involve Senjumaru swiftly taking down Gerard as she uses her arms to tie him down. Kiryu vs Pernida has her creating branches which Pernida avoids, but he eventually appears to be crushed by a large branch. Kurinji is then seen to use his red hot spring water on Askin as he chases him down with the shining Shikai blade of Kinpika. Askin actually puts up a bit of a fight against him until he is seen running away from him. Now the last fight of this anime only sequence involves Lil firing shots towards Nimaya, who evades them before he appears in front of him as he then lunges in for an attack. We then cut to material from the midpoint of chapter 607 as the anime doesn't adapt a brief clash where Yhwach fires spikes of reishi towards Ichibe where he intercepts them with his hands. Instead, the anime adapts right after this moment where Ichibe explains to Yhwach his generous reasoning behind why he had only cut his power in half. The rest of chapter 607 is adapted, with the final material from chapter 607 being Ichibe releasing his Shikai Ichimonji. Content is then adapted from the start of chapter 608 with a panel of internal monologue from Yhwach being omitted from the anime. Now this is where Yhwach comments on how Ichibe had transformed his brush into a blade, and how he doesn't sense any spiritual pressure from it. The anime conveys this instead visually without all of this monologuing, which I think still works the same. So this scene in particular adapts content all the way up until the midpoint of chapter 608 where Ichibe explains how his Shikai works and how he is able to paint anything black and then remove its power. Following this, we cut to more anime exclusive material which reveals how each of the Zero Division members gets bodied by the respective Shoot Starfall member that they are battling. Senjumaru is is the first one shown to be taken out as she fails to pierce Gerard's heart with a needle. Pranida is then revealed to be able to warp and get rid of Kiryo's branches as she struggles to create more, as she eventually then runs out of reishi and returns to her slimmer form. And this is where Pranida takes the upper hand against her. Kirinji also seems to have been defeated when he underestimates Askin, who appears behind him delivering a decisive final blow. Lastly, Nimaya is then taken out by Lil when he tries to attack him while Yhwach is behind him and in the line of sight of Lil's gun. However, Lil fires anyway and lands a critical blow as he reminds Nimaya that his X-axis ability penetrates whatever is in between him and his target. Since his target was Nimaya, the attack must have probably stopped there. With the situation looking really bad for the Zero Division, Kiryo's massive ball of branches disintegrates as we then cut back to Ichibei vs Yhwach. The remainder of chapter 608 begins to be adapted as Yhwach uses his ability Sanct Altar as he attempts to rob Ichibei of his power. After he removes the color black from Ichibei, the anime has a very cool visual of Ichibei's hair in a grey color. Now in the manga, this was shown to us via a very small manga panel, which I think that the anime helps us to better visualize and to understand through this one shot of Ichibei. Following this, the anime adds an all new scene here where Yhwach says to Ichibei that his power has become his now, as he launches an attack composed of blue flames towards him. We are then shown the defeated Zero Division as we then fade into black, which is apparently the midpoint of this episode, as we didn't really end up getting a mid-card for episode 26. Following the midpoint, we return to more anime original material as the second half of episode 26 features one of the most important anime exclusive editions in the entire anime, and it honestly is my highlight for this episode. So we begin with the Schutzstaffel towering over the fallen Squad Zero as Gerard mocks their previous statement of claiming to be more powerful than the entire Gotei 13. Now for a second there, this scene feels like a really self-aware jab by Kubo himself, because this is something that fans have brought up via this statement as a means of mocking Kubo's choice to have overhyped the Zero Division, only for the Gotei 13 to end up later being the ones who defeat the Schutzstaffel. So we continue with the anime exclusive content with Nimaya standing up and warning Gerard not to be too hasty as he reveals that Squad Zero has yet to even use the power of a single division of the Gotei 13. He then yells at his fallen comrades to rise, reminding them that as the protectors of the Soul King, they cannot fall to just mere Quincy. After they all rise, he points his Zanpakuto at Senjumaru, telling her that she's going to be the one to kill them. The tone of Nimaya's speech heavily suggests that this is something that they've done before, like it's some sort of a routine procedure. She then goes on to ask him if he is sure of his choice, as Kiryo responds, stating that her 1,000 arms will be more than enough to deal with their 6 opponents. Kirinji even adds to this by telling Senjumaru that she should be careful and not to go overboard, to which Senjumaru states that it's a no-brainer. This obviously hints at her about to reveal an absolutely insane ability, which foreshadows that she doesn't even need to go all out because she is that powerful, and even a small fraction of the power that she's about to unleash will be more than enough to deal with her opponents. So the Quincy here watch on in confusion, which is a sentiment that is also shared by both anime-only viewers and manga readers, because this is something that was never shown within the manga. Senjumaru steps forward, walking ahead of the group, who now appear to be in a formation, as Nimaya exclaims that he is about to show them how Squad Zero gets serious. Nimaya, Kirinji and Kiryo kneel down, and they end up cutting themselves as they offer up their lives as a sacrifice in order to empower Senjumaru. The actions of the 3 Squad Zero members is confirmed by Uryu, who comments that they have just ended their own lives. Now this is a very bloody and gruesome scene, and it's disturbing that this is a power that the Zero Division have had up their sleeves the entire time. The anime original scene continues as we are shown a shrine with 4 small candles in front of 4 small symbols, and a massive symbol combining all of the 4 small symbols at the back. Now 3 of the lit candles are extinguished, which represent the 3 Squad Zero members who just gave up their lives. The larger projection at the back is left with 1 symbol that presumably represents Senjumaru, as only 1 small candle remains lit up. Following this, we cut back to the royal palace as Senjumaru's Reiatsu erupts, illuminating the area as Senjumaru walks towards Gerard, who asks her what she hopes to achieve by herself, considering that she stood no chance against them when there was 4 of them fighting. Senjumaru then, in one of the most important anime exclusive lines of dialogue in the entire episode, explains that if the Zero Division were to utilize even the slightest amount of their power, then it would cause the 3 realms to tremble. So the 4 members of the Zero Division had linked their lives to one another in order to seal away the true power of their Zanpakuto. So then by sacrificing themselves, Korinji, Nimaya, and Kiryu have allowed Senjumaru to activate her Bankai, or in other words, her true power. This explanation given by Senjumaru has insane implications, because it means that any of the Zero Division members are powerful enough to have been able to single-handedly defeat all of the Schutzstaffel. This is given the condition that they are able to utilize their true power. Now this really justifies Senjumaru's insults that she directed towards Yhwach in an earlier episode, where she comments on how he must have taken some confidence pills for him to think that he can just rock up at the royal palace just because he ended up killing head captain Yamamoto. Prior to this anime exclusive scene, it was hard to even take Senjumaru's taunt seriously, because nothing within the manga had revealed or suggested to us that she had more power that was anywhere near to that of Yamamoto. Now this anime only edition finally convincingly explains how the Zero Division are in fact more powerful than all of the Gotei 13 combined. Then the 5-minute long new anime only scene continues with Senjumaru activating her Bankai, which does in fact result in the 3 realms trembling, and this confirms his statement from earlier, as we are shown even Isshin and Ryuken reacting in the world of the living to her Bankai activation. Senjumaru's Bankai reveal is accompanied by some amazing CGI shots of a giant fabric weaving loom which is being built around her. Her Bankai is revealed to have the power to weave yarn into a cloth that can perfectly counter the ability of her target. The whole sequence that then unfolds excellently foreshadows how each of the Schutzstaffel members are defeated later on in the manga. Firstly, she defeats Lil by using the power of his own attacks reflected back at him, as this is represented by an 8-sided mirror that surrounds him. Now this of course draws a parallel to how he is later defeated by Nanao's divine 8-mirror sword. Askin ends up being defeated by 3 pieces of golden armor which represent his battle against the 3 opponents Yoriichi, Urahara, and Grimmjow. Pranida is shown to be defeated by Senjumaru when he is swallowed up into an infinite vortex of sand, and this is similar to how he is later defeated by being overwhelmed by the uncontrollable multiplication of Nemu cells after he consumes her. Gerard is defeated by having his limbs held in place before being frozen alive, and this of course foreshadows his battle against Kinpachi, Hitsugaya, and Byakuya. Hashward then appears to have been defeated by a massive blast of flames which appear to reduce him down to ashes. Now this interestingly foreshadows his battle against Vaz B. Lastly, Uryu is beaten by a Quincy cross which appears to drain him of his energy as well as his life. Now this foreshadows how he will inevitably have his life stolen by Yhwach if he continues down the path that he is on. Senjumaru's Bankai is riddled with so much symbolism and deeper meaning that it definitely deserves a dedicated video of its own in order to break down this newly revealed incredible power. After having effortlessly defeated her 6 opponents, she proceeds to embroider them onto newly made textile cloths, as this serves as a permanent mark of their defeat. So before I start to go on more of a tangent about how amazing her Bankai is, let's move on to the end of the episode. So we cut to altered manga material adapting the remainder of chapter 608 as we follow up from the blue-flamed attack that Yhwach had fired at Ichibei, as Yuha begins to walk away thinking that the fight is over, only to be surprised when he turns around to see an unfazed Ichibei standing there menacingly, as he then begins to explain how he has power over the color black, which is adapted from the manga really well. Yhwach is then struck by Ichimonji, which adapts material from the very end of chapter 608. Immediately following this, we cut to content adapted from the first half of chapter 609, and it's very faithfully adapted into the end of episode 26, as Ichibei's Bankai Shirafude Ichimonji is used to give Yhwach the name Black Ant. Following this, Yhwach is sent crashing into the air below him, and he is then crushed in mid-air by 2 giant hands that seemingly appear to have defeated him, as Ichibei then refers to Yuha as the king of bugs as he turns around to leave, and then we cut to the credits of episode 26 as Kotu appears to have wrapped up on the 11th page of chapter 609. Following the end credits, we are given a blast from the past as the last 4 minutes of the episode are taken up by an old segment that used to appear at the end of the episodes for the 2004 Bleach anime, and it's called Shinigami Zukan, or the Shinigami Illustrated Guide, which is hosted by the favorite mascot that we love to hate, the King of New York, Kon. Episode 26 fans had presumed would wrap up at chapter 611, which seemed like a reasonable point to end Core 2 on, with Ichibei vs Yhwach concluding at a massive cliffhanger of the Soul King being killed being the most impactful cliffhanger that we believed that Core 2 would wrap things up on. However, because of production issues or for whatever reason, we ended up getting this segment which serves to adapt 2 comedic scenes which were not adapted into earlier episodes. Now I do say adapted loosely because they have limited animation and they are more like voice acted slideshows with backgrounds and character avatars on screen which represent the characters. mangas. So the first comedic scene is taken from chapter 516 when Mayuri is explaining to Ichigo that a broken Bankai cannot be repaired. They are then interrupted by Kon, who appears in a muscular form before he shrinks back down to size as Mayuri directs Ichigo's attention to the Zero Division who have just landed in the Serite. The second comedic scene is adapted from chapter 545 and it's of Rukia and Renji recalling their time spent at Senjumaru's palace. Similar to the first comedic scene, the lines are taken straight out of the manga and it faithfully adapts the comedic moments where she forces Renji to remove his clothes. Kon then funnily wraps up the segment by arguing that they need to show more of this kind of stuff as he complains that the tension between the Shinigami and the Quincy is way too serious in tone, which funnily enough is the reason why this comedic stuff is being cut in order to maintain tonal consistency. Now while it wasn't the most ideal situation to have these comedic scenes included instead of having Yhwach vs Ichibei wrapped up, I still don't mind because it means that anime staff have more time to animate the final portion of their fight. The Shinigami Zukan was definitely a nostalgic trip down memory lane because I used to love waiting for the end of the episodes to watch these funny segments in my teenage years. Well, that brings us to the end of the second part of Bleach's 1000-Year Blood War arc anime. Following the airing of episode 25 and 26, we had an all-new trailer drop for Core 3, as well as this really cool blue-colored key visual of Uryu which teases that Core 3 is titled The Conflict and it will begin streaming sometime in 2024. Now I have made a separate video which breaks down the new trailer that we received, so definitely go and check out that video as I speak about all of the new material that we can hope to see in the next part of Bleach, which includes new scenes featuring Ukitake, Aizen possibly returning to the story, as well as the chance that we may get an all-new fight between Ichigo and Uryu. Core 2 had started by adapting material from chapter 543 and taking us all the way to the midpoint of chapter 609, which covers a solid 67.5 chapters worth of material, which is slightly more than the 62 chapters worth of content that was adapted into Core 1. Now unlike Core 2, we don't really have any idea as to what month in 2024 the next part of Bleach will begin airing in, but I do hope that they have more time than 6 months to deliver the next batch of 13 episodes. I have really enjoyed keeping all of you up to date with these reviews and manga versus anime comparison videos, so if you have enjoyed the content then definitely subscribe to the channel and stick around for more regular Bleach content. Leave your suggestions in the comments for what videos you would like to see uploaded to fill the space between Core 2 and 3. I look forward to reading all of your thoughts on the finale of the second part of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime, and lastly, thanks for making it to the end of this video, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.